Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Where are we and who are you?
We are in Brevard, North Carolina, which is just south of Asheville in the Appalachian Mountains, and I am Leah Webb.
And what do you get into?
I am an author and a garden consultant, and so I own and operate an edible landscaping business where we design, install, and maintain edible landscapes that also serve the purpose of being beautiful. So it's like traditional landscaping meets gardening,
Okay.
vegetable gardening.
And you spend most of your time, how do you help people most, do you find?
With gardening
Yeah.
specifically, I do a lot of educating and a lot of teaching. I do a lot of planting with people. But the main part of my job is actually building the actual gardens. We do a lot of that as well.
Themselves.
Yeah, because it takes quite a bit of time.
To set it up, amend or where, so that idea of like the green thumb theory. I don't have a green thumb. So like, where do you go? Do you go buy a green thumb? Where do you get it?
It is learned. So I think that one of the challenges with gardening and why people think that they should have a green thumb is that we're a very instant gratification sort of society.
Yeah.
You know, we order things online and they come in 2-day shipping, or you can get everything you want and you can get it pretty quickly. And with gardening, it's not like that. So you have to wait. Let's say you missed your timing for planting a tomato.
Yeah.
You have to wait an entire year to try that again. And so there's a slowness to it that we are not accustomed to. And so it's something that people will often, they don't want to keep trying because they feel like they failed, when the reality is that you just have to embrace the slowness.
Do that a few times. I always say too, you have to have a red thumb before you have a green thumb. And the red thumb is bleeding. And you know what I mean? Like the things you go through of like the failures for it. Do you have a lot more people asking for greenhouses now? Is that picking up a little bit?
Some. I'd say that a lot of people want greenhouses, but when we do a lot of custom work, and so we do assemble kits and things like that as well. But oftentimes the clientele that we're working with want custom builds, and it's a pretty big expense when you're talking about that.
Yeah.
But I will say, yes, I have seen, since COVID in general, I have seen more and more people interested in growing their own food, what it takes, what are some of the, greenhouses have such a tremendous benefit when you're talking about extending your season, being able to start your own plants, having better control over the varieties. And so, yes, I would say I am seeing an increase in people that want them, not necessarily increase in people that we're installing them for right now. Yeah.
So what I'm most curious about too is how many of the people come, like between the DIY, the pre-made thing, and the DIY version of it, what percentage of the time do people come out saying DIY versus, kit? And then what percentage of those people actually follow through?
With, as far as like our clientele, or just in general?
In general, yeah.
In general, I would say more people get kits.
Yeah.
More people get kits, and the people who buy the kits generally follow through with them.
Yeah.
Because it's more of an investment. Even though the assembly is going to take less time than if you built one yourself. So chances are, if you're building one yourself, that means that you're probably a GC or a carpenter, and that's what you do all day. And it's like that joke that the carpenter's house is the worst house, or the dentist kid has the worst teeth.
The mechanic has the breakdown truck in his driveway.
Exactly. So, so that's where I think the kits just make it really straightforward. Like, and some of the kits are pretty easy to assemble.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is like price range. It goes all over the place. But do you find that there's kind of brackets? You're either doing the, DIY, which is a $100 to $500 kind of thing. You can get something going with hoop, with cover, all the way to like 10,000. Like, where does the range kind of go from? Like, you can go.
It's all over the place. Yeah. I mean, because I teach classes as well, and so I work with a wide range of people.
Yeah.
And so people have shown me photos of really interesting things that they've been able to put together themselves. And then most recently, someone told me, she came to a class of mine, so she's not a client where we installed a garden, but she ordered a greenhouse online that came in pallets with bricks and glass, everything. And And so I don't know how much money she spent on this. And so I would say that would be the upper end. It really varies. I think that, and I think that that's a testament to the fact that growing food you can do it on very little resources, or you can invest a lot of resources into it. And I mean, either way, growing food is an investment, but I see people, regardless of their socioeconomic status, who are investing in gardening. And it's just that the garden that they decide to invest in is a reflection of the amount of money that they have.
Yep. And so the one thing that I get asked about or brought up more than anything, I feel like, is I want to go find old window panels and a whole bunch of them, and I want to construct and build. And I don't know if it's because of like social media or like the aesthetic of it. What do you tell people about those?
I mean, if they're able to do it, that's great. But, if you've ever built something, then you know that having a bunch of different sized rectangles that you're trying to piece together is going to be really hard. But I mean, people are able to, it has been done. Yeah. I think that a better approach would actually be to find a bunch of standard size sliding glass doors.
Oh, interesting.
Or something that is more uniform.
Yeah.
It's not going to have that same kind of funky, bohemian sort of look to it.
Right. Yeah,
but it is going to be a lot more practical as far as putting it together. And that glass is going to be a lot sturdier too.
Yeah. So like there's the appeal of getting somebody interested enough in being out there. They enjoy that. And then the kind of entry threshold. I only have so much money. And I feel like a lot of people are in a space where they're short on money, so they need to be more resourceful. Have you ever found somebody that's figured out a good way of like being creative with what's available?
Well, I think a lot of people are. I mean, I would say I think it really depends. All of this depends on your skill level.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's the most practical DIY things I've seen are people who really know how to make things.
Yeah.
And so, my DIY, is a lower grade, success. But even things like, I've used to build a lot of raised beds using rock borders or locust.
Oh, okay,
And so things that don't rot. And that's like really, really it's practical because it's cheap. I can pull rocks out of my creek.
Yeah.
Locust is, it's a highly rot resistant wood that we get pretty abundantly around here. So that's a pretty cheap option. But then, I've seen somebody who bought $20 to $50 old oil tanks.
Yeah.
And cleaned the heck out of them, sawed them in half, and turned them into raised beds. And this is actually even one of the projects that we did for somebody else. We installed oil tanks for them for their raised beds.
Yeah.
And so,
that's funny.
So for a client to pay us to do that labor is a lot more than somebody who can do it themselves. But that's where I'm saying it really depends on your skill level. I think when you have a high level of skill, when you can build things, it just makes it, it makes it easier.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing you need is space, obviously. But the other thing I'm very curious about is between the $1,000 greenhouse, let's say, however you get that done, whether it's kit, DIY, all the way to the $15,000, $20,000 greenhouse, along that spectrum of the more you spend, is it just the less time you have to manage and maintain? Or do you feel like how big of a difference is there between the $1,000 greenhouse and the $10,000 greenhouse?
I think there you do spend less time managing it.
Yeah.
I think you end up with when you're investing more money, you're getting it set up in a way that that's the thing. When all of us start gardening, we start with the cheap option. And I think that what we all start to do over time is that we start to invest.
Yep.
Because we realize, okay, the cheap option definitely works and I got the job done, but you know what? I'd really like for this to be a bit easier.
Yeah.
Or I'd like it to be a bit more successful. And so anytime you do invest in your garden, especially your greenhouse, like the $1,000 greenhouse, it probably doesn't have any type of automated vents. You're probably having to replace the plastic all the time. You're still growing some things, but it gets easier when you invest. And when you're really trying to produce a large amount of food for yourself or your family, the maintenance never ends.
Yeah.
It's constant. You're growing plants, you're battling nature, it never ends. And so at some point it becomes tiresome if you don't have it set up in a way that's manageable.
The wheel.
Yeah, you just feel like you're always like doing the same thing again and again and again, and eventually you realize there are easier ways to get it done, and those easier ways usually require money.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about? I just thought that's what the coolest thing that I found out about today was in your greenhouse you have the vents, and I thought that they were all hooked up to like a thermostat that would determine when to open, when to close. Can you tell me how those actually work?
Yeah, so it's just it's a simple hinge that is screwed into, it's got a rod that is screwed into a wax column.
Yeah.
And so when it gets warm in the greenhouse, the wax expands and it pushes it open almost 18 inches.
Yeah.
And then as the wax cools, it contracts and then the rod just slides back in and they close. So, and that type of, I have... I guess I've got 10 vents in my greenhouse, and each of those hinges cost $25. So, for a $250 investment, my windows open by themselves.
Right.
And close by themselves.
And if you did hoop house instead, you have to manually go roll those up, tie those too. There's chance for rippage and other stuff like that with the plastic. And
right.
Do you call yourself a farmer?
I don't. I consider myself to be a maintainer of a big garden.
Yeah. How big is your greenhouse there?
325 square feet.
That's a pretty hefty, right?
Yeah.
And most people ask, I'm assuming most people ask, how many people can that feed? It's like their calculations.
Well, and I think it depends on how you're using it.
Yeah.
This is a big backyard greenhouse.
Yeah.
It would be too small for a legitimate farm. Like if somebody was a flower farmer or something where they didn't need quite as many plants, I think that this would be adequate in size. But this is a pretty big backyard hobbyist greenhouse. And, but I do see where I think that if you're trying to figure out what size greenhouse you want, I would say go big.
Yeah.
Because you can... I've got a few raised beds in there, but if I had more raised beds, I'd be growing even more food. So I don't feel like you can really go, you could go too big. You could,
sure.
100 by 100 would be a crazy big greenhouse, but I don't know. It'd also be super sweet.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too. We talked about like the seasonality, and it is really about season extension, right? And being able to grow and really extend that. And this is, you said zone 7A. I know Virginia, I think, is zone 7 or anyways, all along the Appalachia, kind of around the mountains. But that season extension, how much does your life change from just growing within the season, which is pretty extensive already, to what you're doing?
It changed pretty drastically. And I would say that it took a few years to get good at it and figure out what it is that works and what doesn't. But there are things that I never buy in the stores. For example, beets. I have a constant supply of beets. Carrots, I do okay with carrots. Leafy greens, I rarely have to buy. But it's not like I'm not going to the grocery store. Calorically speaking, the majority of my calories are coming from the store still.
Yeah.
Because, it's like butter, oil, meats, vegetables are very low calories.
Yeah.
And so it's not like I'm growing 100% of my food, but by being able to extend my season, starting my plants earlier in the greenhouse, I grew a lot more than I used to be able to.
I don't think we're going to be able to hear much of this. So what would you say is, if the garden is a sanctuary, what is the greenhouse?
Oh, I think it's its own sanctuary.
Yeah?
And
no different.
Well, no, not really, because, and even it served purposes that the garden can't. So, for example, during COVID, we would open the windows or open the vents, open the doors. I had 4 chairs where we could sit like 6 feet apart and like have wine dates with my friends. And, you know, and it didn't matter if it was raining because you're in a covered space. And, I mean, the number of times, like rainy days like this, I mean, the number of times I've sat in the greenhouse and have like planted plants. And I mean, there's something really amazing about being in a clear house while it's raining and you're planting. Yeah. So I think,
I like that.
I feel like it's like part of the sanctuary, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like a package deal.
I just never knew if people felt it was more like the nursery was the like laboratory, and then they come out, you know what I mean? Like it's the incubation chamber, but I think it still feels very like it doesn't feel artificial.
No, it doesn't feel artificial at all. And I think you get more, I mean, seasonally speaking, there are more months that I'm working in my greenhouse than I'm working in my garden.
Yeah, but it kind of becomes that space that you get to go to, and sometimes it does look like a little chapel.
It does,
which is kind of funny though. And you said that's Gothic style, and then there's hoop, and then has anything drastically changed in greenhouses, let's say in the past decade?
Not that I know. I mean, so it's like Bluetooth has changed everything. I know that locally there is a greenhouse. I can't remember the exact price tag, but it's somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million.
What does it do?
It does everything.
Oh my God.
But there's so much automation that, you know, it's, that is really, really high tech, but that's got cooling systems, heating systems, watering systems. Everything can be controlled with an app.
It's great to make it easier. It's great to make it more convenient, more practical. But when do you go kind of too far and take the art out of agriculture?
Yeah, and that's even some of the things I do, like when I add fertilizer to my bag when I'm bumping my tomatoes up into their grow bags for the season, and I add fertilizer, like I don't have a recipe. I just kind of eyeball it, and I realize that I could make it better if I had this like systemized approach, but I think it does. It takes the human element out of it. And
I incubate and germinate all of my plants indoors in grow lights and then take them outside. But I'm trying to get that 1 month ahead of that
start.
Yeah, that jump start on. And essentially what you're doing out here is you get the whole season is a jump start, right?
Yeah, it ends up being months. I get months of a jump start. But I still use things like grow lights too.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the automation I think takes the joy out of it for me. And I think that's a personality thing too, because I know some people like techie things and they like to, for them it's like fun and exciting that they can like really fine tune this stuff and get it down to a science. Your personality determines how you garden. And how much joy you can get out of it.
Can you speak to that at all in terms of, like the lifestyle investment? There's a cost to these things, but what are you getting out of it?
I feel like I get so much out of it. And especially as a mother I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. Both of them have health needs. Mm-hmm. So my son has severe food allergies. And as a result, our diet is restrictive. He carries an EpiPen for a wheat allergy.
Yeah.
So he basically goes into anaphylaxis like if he had eaten peanuts or something.
Yeah.
And so this is something that we avoid completely. And food choices have gotten a lot better over the last 10 years for gluten-free eating. But a lot of the gluten-free options were not very nutritious when he was first born.
Yeah.
And it's still true. Like gluten-free foods are some of the crappiest foods out there.
Yeah.
And so I think his health circumstances, and then my daughter has cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease. And, and so I think for my kids, it's like they already kind of have some limitations when it comes to their health.
Sure.
And so when I am not growing 100% of our food, but I am supporting their health with fresh nutrition.
Yeah.
And we're outside a lot more. I think that the garden gets you moving. It basically just teaches you this full circle of the food comes out of the ground, you plant the seed,
you nourish it, you take care of it, and then it turns into this plant. Then you carefully turn it into this food that then is going to nourish you. And so I think that there's nourishment that you get at every step of that we can't even necessarily measure.
Do you find that it's a certain philosophy of like the people that are asking about setting these up? Are they doing it out of aspiration or fear?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's both, and it depends on the person.
Yeah.
So some people are doing it because they see the importance in it and they value the quality of food. And that's a lot of the reason I do it. And then there is some fear in there too. I mean, some people are doing it because they love it and they care about it and they think it's important. Yeah. And other people are doing it because they think that eventually, like, everything's going to go to shit and they need to know how to grow the best food. It's really just a basic life skill. Yeah. I think of cooking and gardening as basic life skills. And I think that our society has changed so much in a way that they don't seem as relevant. Yeah. And so that art is being lost, like that skill is being lost. But I do see a resurgence. I see people being more interested. I do believe in the value of it provides some autonomy, right? Like,
right. It doesn't replace the grocery store. It doesn't replace.
Right. Yeah. Like I was telling you, we in September of 2024, Hurricane Helene hit Western North Carolina, and we got between 24 and 36 inches of rain, depending on the place we're at, in 2 days. Yeah. And we had catastrophic damage in a way that could not have been predicted. We lost cell phone service. We couldn't get fuel trucks in. We couldn't get grocery store deliveries. So basically we were forced to live off of what we had without communicating, having no idea how extensive the damage is, when anything was going to be coming. We lost power for 8 days, and that was nothing compared to what other people lost. Yeah. And so having a garden during that time, we're still eating fresh fruits and vegetables, like not so much fruits.
I was going to say, what role did this play?
Play a huge role, actually. It was, and I would not consider myself a prepper. Yeah. But I do a lot of meal prepping. It's not the same. Yeah. It's not the same thing. It's like meal prepping is like, I'm like ready for like the day to day. You know what I mean? Prepper is like, different, like, I don't have like 100 pounds of rice.
No, I get that. I just want to go to a conference where it is all preppers and then just be like, I meal prep at the beginning of the week. And you just get those slow turns. Okay, so you're not a prepper.
I'm not a prepper, but I am a meal prepper. Yeah. But meal prepping, in order to make it efficient, you buy things in bulk. I buy like, 40 pounds of beef at a time from the local farm. It goes in my freezer. I buy lots of things when they're on sale. So it's like I automatically have kind of a stockpile of foods in my house. Yeah. And so, when Helene happened, I had also grown, what are they? Striped green cushaws, which is a type of winter squash it's like yay big and it's huge.
Oh, the whole thing.
Yeah, the whole squash is enormous. And so I'll eat usually about one squash a month over the winter.
Holy Toledo.
And, you just cut a chunk of it off and then shove it back in the fridge and then cut another chunk off. And so, like the running, and I have tons of leeks. I mean, our running joke was basically that us and my dog were going to be living off of ground beef, leeks, and giant winter squash.
Which sounds terrible.
And, I was down, like the kids were like, oh,
yeah.
So, but I think that having, when people talk about storage crops, they're usually talking about sweet potatoes and potatoes. But I would argue that winter squash, you get way more bang for your buck.
How do you feel like that growing all of this? Like, do you feel that you have become more a part of the community in a sense, or that this somewhat isolated? Like, the more you have that autonomy, that you share that with others, or do you hold it for yourself?
I do like to share it. I like to share the education piece. So, sharing, having classes and going to conferences, and that piece I feel like is one that I like sharing. I've got the capacity to share. It's even energizing to me. Yeah. But I have had times where my garden has been so big that I've produced excess and have sold it, or things like that. That doesn't feel as that feels tougher to me. Really to make a, and I know that we're not necessarily talking about making a profit, but when you grow food and you're invested in it, you are sharing with your community
Yeah.
You know, farmers are sharing a huge service with us. You know, they're sharing a huge part of themselves with us. And so for me, that feels too much. But I love having people here. I like having fires. You know, just having friends over for potlucks. It does create community. And yeah.
How many years ago would you say you started really getting into all of this?
I started I'm 41. I started my first garden when I was like 19. But I would say I started, when I was 20, I started working at nurseries.
Yeah.
And so I've done landscaping and nursery work and garden work for,
You've done this.
like 22 years.
Just a little bit. Do you find that there's anything that you would have appreciated knowing at the outset? Or do you think that all the lessons were intricate to where you are now?
Is there something I wish I knew when I started, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I think just that I would get better.
Oh, yeah. It's not gonna.
I think just that, you know, it takes practice. And I think just realizing that the way you garden and the way you interact with your garden, it always changes. And so you were talking about lessons you get from your garden.
Yeah.
I think that's probably my biggest lesson is my garden is the size of it, how productive it is, like how many weeds are in it. I mean, all of these different things are a direct reflection of what my life looks like in that moment. And so I think it's been just kind of humbling and also just takes some pressure off to be like, yeah, it's always changing. It's like a growing, moving entity that sometimes it's amazing and sometimes you just like totally screw it up. And then, you know, just always knowing that you come back to it when it makes sense.
Yep. Finding that pragmatism. I don't think there's a better thing to end on. If people do want to find you or be in contact or whatever, what are the different ways that people can learn more about you?
They can find me at leahmwebb.com or they can check out Facebook or Instagram. I'm Leah M. Webb there. I've got 2 books that they can find online as well. And yeah.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.